This is the Begin Within podcast, where we believe real, lasting health and fitness requires you to start inside before you work out. I'm your host, Nate Slegger, and I'm here to show you behind the scenes of fitness. You already know exercise is good for you, but what about all the other things in life that affect your fitness? If you're looking for extra motivation to get started or to make sure you keep going, this is the place for you.
Produced by BeginWithin.fit.
Improving health is about so much more than just losing weight. But I realize weight loss might be the goal that brought you here to the Begin Within podcast. That's why I wrote my latest book, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss, to reveal the 5 areas that I see are most overlooked by the people that I work with who want to lose weight. Each one of the chapters in this free ebook describes that specific area that you need to focus on to improve your health and get great permanent results. And it also links back here to episodes of the podcast where we've had experts on the show talking about that specific area, so you can benefit from those previous episodes while you're learning about how to maximize the results that you're after. You can get your free copy of my ebook, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss, by going to beginwithin.fit/ebook or going to the link in the show notes. Now is a great time to do a little multitasking while you're listening to the start of this episode. Head over to grab your free copy of my book, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss. If you missed the URL, here it is again, beginwithin.fit/ebook, or there is a link in the show notes for you. Grab your copy, and now let's get on with today's episode. My guest today is Igor Limansky. He was a contestant on season 9 of the show Alone. And I don't know if you've seen the show. My wife and I just love it. Amanda and I we love to sit down when the season is when it's available, right? And watch the show. The idea of the show is this: I think there's 10 people to start each season, and they're all taken to a very remote place, and they're allowed to take, I think it is 10 items with them. They can choose 10 items, and then it's whoever survives the longest. And they have the ability to kind of tap out. They have a satellite phone that they can call and just say, hey, I'm done. Someone comes and picks them up. They do health checks throughout. And of course, if they're in trouble, they use this satellite phone as well. But basically, you're watching these individuals. They are truly alone, and they're surviving, so they have to hunt for themselves, etc. So we like to watch it. We love the woods, we love nature, we love the peace of it all, and just of course the drama is interesting. But one of the things that would take you by surprise is the effect that being actually alone, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, the toll that it takes on individuals, that kind of surprises you. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the interview, my interview with Igor. But a few other things that we're going to focus on. I wanted to know from him what, the food situation was like. How does your attitude toward food get affected by being in that situation? He's going to talk as well about his history, because before being on the show, he did some interesting things with fasting and excursions as well. So he's going to talk about those and some of the lessons that he learned from it, as well as the lessons that he learned from of course being on the show. One of the interesting things that I want you to listen for is when he talks about the idea of having multiple mindsets and trying to create space for both. I think that's very important for us as just in general, being able to have a healthy perspective on ourselves. So I hope you enjoy this really special interview with Igor Limansky.
I'm a super fan of Alone. I love the show. And the show itself actually has had a real impact in how I go hunting and how I spend time in the outdoors. So I've been a bow hunter for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. But after like getting really into Alone, I started really stripping down the gear that I would bring and make it much more, bare bones and survival oriented. And so I've just been a fan of the show, and it's an open casting call. So they just have an email with a few questions that you just send in an email to. And I can't remember the numbers. I know they're really high, something like 30,000 emails that they get. And then from there, they follow up with another like email response. And I had actually applied. That was my third year applying,
Oh,
and I hadn't gotten a response from my first email the first two times I applied. And then the third time I applied, they just sent me a response and said, like, hey, we saw your application. It looks interesting. Here's 10 questions if you can just answer them. And then from there, it's kind of off to the races. It was a really long and intensive process of emails back and forth, Zoom conversations with the casting director, and then with other folks down the line. And then the big chunk that you see somewhat in the video where the bio video,
oh yeah.
you've got to send them. If I remember correctly, it was like 30 to 45-minute videos of you doing things in the wild. So everything from you handline fishing to archery to identifying plants to building a friction fire to, I mean, just anything you can do to show your skills and being adept with the camera and telling your story. And so, and then you have a boot camp. And so it's a long process, but it really just starts with an email. So if folks are excited about it, I would say, go to the website and just shoot an email off with a little bit of your story and why you're interested. And you never know what will happen. I certainly didn't think I would get on.
Oh man, I would be scared to even do it. I'd be like jumping out of a plane. Yeah, I would equally scared. Man. Okay. What was it for you that I guess moved you to want to do it? You were already kind of practicing a lot of it from just the area you live in. You're an outdoors type of guy, it seems like.
Yeah, I think for me, it was a combination of like I wanted to write a passage. I've always been really interested in rites of passage as a way to mark moments in my life. And when I was 20, I went to Spain to do the Camino de Santiago, which is a walk across northern Spain that's been a pilgrimage for 1,500 years. And for me, I realized when I was young that there wasn't rite of passage in society anymore for a boy to really become a man. And some cultures still have it. And locally, I live in Utah, and so I'm not a member of the LDS faith, but for folks who are part of the LDS religion, they go on their mission, and
Mm.
that is their distinctive rite of passage from boyhood into manhood. But for me, growing up here, it became clear that I was 20 years old, and I felt like I had never really marked that period in my life. And so I created this rite of passage for myself. And in my life, having those types of reflective moments are important to me. And one thing that I do really often is I do fasts, and I do those in nature. And so I've done week-long fasts in nature to try and get uh, a deeper sense of connection, to be part of the ecosystem, and just kind of let myself fast from multiple things, right? So fast from food is pretty normal for us all, but when you actually fast from technology, when you fast from taking input, whether it's visually through TV, whether it's through podcasts, whatever it is, but when you're really doing those types of fasts, you start to realize how much brain power goes into processing all of that information. And so to just take a pause from doing that is something that I enjoy doing. And the alone experience seemed like uh, a culmination of a lot of things that I liked, a lot of things that brought purpose into my life, and I wanted the opportunity to kind of have a, kind of a public stage to have a rite of passage for myself. And it's also nice that, they fly out to Labrador or Patagonia or whatever the season is. And so, and you have a safety team, right? You've got a group of folks who, if you are in trouble, they're there within a half hour to an hour. And so it was kind of like this culmination of a lot of things that I was passionate about. And I just respect the way they do the show. There's no producer telling you what to say, there's no drama between different participants fighting. Everything they show is really stuff that you filmed, and they get to put together the story that they put together, but they do that based on the hours of filming that you do while you're out there. And so I respect the show and respected the folks who are making it.
Yeah, no, that was a great expression. So for you, it was concepts that you were already similar or familiar with, and similar to things that you had done, aspects of things you had done already, just in your own, for your own. I use the word recreation loosely because you take it a lot more seriously. It's really for personal growth and connection with the environment, right?
Yeah, but I think I find personal growth to be like really interdependent with recreation and pleasure. And,
Yeah.
if you're not enjoying it and it's just like a bare knuckle, I'm gonna make myself better. It doesn't have much appeal to me. And it's certainly a type of discipline and a way of looking at growth that a lot of people subscribe to, and more power to them. But it's certainly not the way of being that I like to subscribe to. And I think finding pleasure and play in the things that you're doing is really important. So recreational is a great term to use.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I guess in its true definition, right? Recreate. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Um, yeah, the other thing I thought of while you were relating, getting onto the show was like I always feel for the guys that have to watch all that footage to put the story together. I'm like, man.
You
What kind-
you're contractually obligated to film 40 hours a week.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
you have that camera rolling, basically when you wake up in the morning and just like sitting around the fire boiling your water or cutting down a tree or doing whatever, and you have four cameras. So, and some people do better than others. I don't think filming was my strong suit. I didn't always set up like the big nice camera. I would like walk around with my GoPro a lot. And but you have a camera rolling just all the time, and they've got to go through that footage, and
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, I wonder what type of lessons they're learning as as they go through that. Um, could we talk about lessons, like takeaways? I mean, it's interesting to me that you were already so familiar with the concepts of fasting and doing, solo retreats and things like that. After being on the show, were there some big lessons that you took with you from that experience, and what were they?
Yeah, I mean, really concretely, the first thing I'll say is even though I have like a fasting and meditation practice, I've never fasted while trying to build a shelter. Do you know what I mean? Like I think I was really surprised at how quickly my physical and mental acuity just started dropping when I was doing a lot of expenditure and not putting anything back in. And is really different from what I do when I'm normally fasting, because I'm normally fasting, I'm pretty stationary. Even when I'm doing it in the wild, I set up my little tarp, I set up my place, and then, I'll walk around, but I won't do anything that's that physically exerting. And there was definitely a point where I felt like I wasn't monitoring myself as clearly as I thought I was. And if you've ever been in a car when you run out of gas, and for whatever reason you haven't been paying attention to the gauge, and all of a sudden you hear that clunk clunk and it shuts down, that was exactly the way it felt for me, where I was going along, and I was definitely feeling that diminishing returns and that drop in mental acuity and physical health. But then I just like hit a completely out of gas, and like my body was just like it was done. It was completely done. And so I definitely learned the lesson of like how much do I have in the tank and what do I spend those calories on. And so from a really practical physical point of view, that was something I took away. Um, I think I also, realized how much my intention was around creating a rite of passage for myself, and how the rite of passage was really about acceptance of the experience. And I feel like very much in life, that's also, we all have the option of looking backwards with, I wish I had done this sooner, or I wish I had done this differently. And that's great from a growth perspective. And I think we need certainly growth mindset to improve and change things in our lives. But I think it's also equally important to just have a being mindset where we're really having radical acceptance of the moment and of the experience, and learning from a state of really loving the experience and seeing the experience as whole and complete, and our participation in it as whole and complete. And so, from a rite of passage perspective, I certainly have the option of saying these are all the things that I could have improved on, and that's great. I'll take that into the future. But I just really want to center on that experience was the perfect rite of passage for me. And I'm going to take that perspective on my life from years 0 to 40, as I did on Alone from days, 0 to 20. And so I feel like that was a really important lesson to take away from the experience.
Yeah, I like that. I like the phrase radical acceptance that you
Yeah.
use. Yeah. Could you tell me more about how you define that? Like when you hear that, what does that mean for you? Radical
Yeah,
accept.
radical acceptance means, for me in this context, the ability to see the moment as whole and perfect, and to really believe that it wasn't lacking anything. There wasn't any way to improve it. And again, like there's two mindsets, and I don't think they need to be competing for space. I think we can inhabit both of them fully and simultaneously. And from one perspective, I feel like the experience was perfect, it was whole, and it didn't lack anything. And my participation in the moment didn't lack anything. And coming from that, and I would describe that as a form of love, right? We're loving ourselves and the way we showed up in that moment. We're loving the experience itself, and we're being okay with the thoughts of maybe it wasn't enough, right? That's included in the whole of the experience. Um, and so I think starting from that place of radical acceptance where there isn't anything to improve and it is a whole perfect experience, from there I can certainly be open to, it's perfect and it needs work, right?
Mm.
um, and I can and it's a much kind of better place to come from an emotional point of view, from a physiological point of view, where we're accepting the moment as it is, and we're growing from there.
Yeah. I like that. I think as I was listening, I have a little more clarity probably than ever on the probably the healthiest order of mindset, if
Mm.
if defining it is there. I think so often, at least in our culture, and in particular in this realm where we are talking about fitness, we're talking about people trying, we're all working to try to improve our health or whatever. But so often we look at it from the first of all, what was wrong? Why don't I have the results that I wanted? Let's look at it that way. And then, oh yeah, now that you don't feel so good, let's have self-compassion, and let's try to feel good so that we can go back to work, right? And try to get better
Right.
results again. But
Yeah.
you say reversing them, and I can see the value in that, of start with acceptance, and then you have a better place to look at what could have been better.
Yeah. As someone who's, been in the world of meditation for a little over 17 years now, I think the figured ground reversal and starting with compassion for the self hopefully gets you to not get so involved and entangled in like, I got to get better at meditating 10 minutes a day, or I got to get better at being kind to myself. Or, I think as humans, we kind of see a lot of things through that lens,
Yeah.
and can kind of get off to the races with it.
Yeah. No, I think those are, the essence of of that self-compassion and a feeling of being okay with where we are now is an important um, balance to have, especially when we get wrapped up into the world of self-improvement. And a lot of our listeners, they come for they're trying to lose weight, right? That's the big thing. And being able to have those two mindsets coexist, like you were talking about, where you can be okay, and I can also be okay knowing that I have to improve and
Yeah.
continuing to do that. Um, super important. Could we talk about the best way to get in touch with you? If you want to talk about some of the work that you've been doing too, um, go for it. What have you been up to? I know we were trying to connect, and then you were doing a retreat, and I was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the retreat that we just did, and there's going to be another one in spring. This retreat was much more oriented towards Zen meditation, ancestral connection, and wilderness skills. And the retreat I'm going to be doing in spring, which will be up on my website soon, is going to be a fly fishing retreat with wilderness skills mixed in, and we'll see how much meditation we're going to do. I feel like there's an opportunity when in nature to engage with meditation, just because there's such an open field of relaxation. I think anyone who's spent time hunting or fly fishing or just hiking, knows how easy it is to just like sink into that,
Yeah.
space of awareness where you're just like astounded by the beauty and grandeur of everything. And so, yeah, I've been doing meditation retreats, and then mixing in these wilderness skills. In my professional life, I'm consultant facilitator. I do a lot on racial equity, diversity, and inclusion, centering mostly in how to have difficult conversations, how to learn to tell your story, how to listen deeply, how to become aware of, when you are triggered and actually hitting your ceiling and not able to engage, and how you can actually, bring your nervous system down to a spot where you can engage again and be a high functioning social creature. And so a lot of that is a little bit of coaching, a lot of training for leadership teams, working with nonprofits, also working in politics. That's where I spent about a dozen years. And so training folks on how to have better conversations with people so they're can work through some of the political cognitive dissonance and actually connect human to human, story to story. And so that's a lot of my work. And uh, yeah, if folks are interested, they can find me on Instagram. They can also go to my website. It's just igorlimansky.com. I just recently filmed a documentary. I went to
Really?
Egypt 3 weeks to film a documentary about my mom's from Egypt. She came here as a refugee. My grandfather is a Coptic Christian. So the Coptic people are the indigenous people of Egypt, and who are majority Christian. And so I went there to film a documentary about their lives and the holy holidays of Easter and Shem Nassim, and so that's going to be coming out, probably next year in spring. I'm just working on the editing of that. So
Okay. Wow. So many projects. That's
I
awesome.
know, I know, I've
Well,
got a patient wife. That's
I love it.
important.
Yeah, same boat. I'm always like, I'm just such a project oriented person. I just love it, creative stuff. So, I'll make sure those links are in the
Cool.
show notes. Just one more question, kind of in closing. If someone's listening and um, I feel like maybe one of the themes is just, radical acceptance, um, or working on maybe getting out of that results oriented frame of mind. What would be one of the easiest little steps that you might recommend that they could start to take in order to get out of that stressed out, results oriented kind of mindset?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would just start with just like taking a breath. Just like take a deep breath and also start by feeling whatever it is you're feeling. So if you can take a deep breath, you can then just start to realize, what's going on physiologically. How is your heartbeat? How is your sense of hunger? Right? Like how is there any tightness in your chest? Like just start by like noticing some physiological cues, and then just tell yourself it's okay, right? Like it's okay to have desires. It's okay to have a striving mind. It's okay to be human. I had a meditation teacher who used to say, the mind produces thoughts the way the stomach produces acid. And just like be really compassionate about whatever I'm thinking, whatever I'm feeling, it's okay. And then, and then see where you're at.
Okay, awesome.
But yeah, take deep breaths, physiological cues, just note them, and then just tell yourself that it's okay.
Yeah. Oh, great. Easy first step. What's easier than that,
Yeah.
right? Breathe. But as you're saying that, I'm like, I've I don't know. Today you just run, you just go, and obviously we're respirating, but we're not breathing. We're not
Yeah,
taking.
one thing to say is so I always say grace right before I eat. But what I also do is I actually notice how hungry I am from 0 to 100.
Okay.
And so that actually gives me like a physiological cue of like, oh, I'm at a 65. You know what I mean? And it's amazing like what precision you can have with like feeling into your body. And if you make it into a ritual before you eat, like grace, like anything else, it just becomes, you start to like do it inherently, like, oh, I'm hungry. Well, how hungry am I? And then you start to actually build that awareness and that like, note to say like, oh, this is an opportunity for a little awareness with my body.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Igor
Yeah.
Limansky, thank you so much for being here on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
It was so great to have Igor on the show. I should tell you this before I had him on the show. Of course, I watched the season 9 of Alone, and before it was even over, I was like, this guy. Uh, I really like this guy. There's just something about him I feel drawn to, and I could tell that he had some knowledge of physical fitness. And anyway, you'll see it if you check out the season, or if you've already watched it, you know what I'm talking about. But for some reason, I felt drawn to him, and I reached out to him, and he said sure he would do the interview on the podcast. So I'm so thankful to him for doing that. It was really cool for me to be able to meet with him, and also. If you want to follow his work and connect with him, the links are in the show notes. One of the things that we talked about that I just want to review before we wrap is the idea on mindset. We talk about being able to have multiple mindsets, being able to make space for both. Here's how I perceive that, and this is something that I do. Even as I coach individuals when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to fitness, is we could get so focused on the moment, on cravings, on making the wrong decision. We just get hyper focused on the immediate here and now. It's like we're just zoomed in on feelings of discomfort. Again, like I said, the cravings that we might have for a certain food, or our fear or anxiety that might be impacting us to, influencing us to make decisions that later we're going to regret. We just get hyper focused in that moment. And that's one mindset, right? But our mind has the ability to also not just zoom in, but then also to zoom out and look at the bigger picture, look at the journey that we've been on, look at the progress that we've made. And I'm not talking just about progress in terms of what the scale says, right? Have I lost weight or not? But to look at the journey of self-discovery. What have I learned about myself in this process? When have I been successful? What have I done really well? What am I most proud of in the last year or in the last 5 years in this journey? of health and fitness. Of course, we're gonna be able to zoom back in, we can zoom back out, and we can do that whenever we choose, whenever it serves us best. So I want to invite you as an action step to do that. And you can do this in terms of a conversation. You could do this in terms of a conversation with yourself if you want. You know me, I'm a podcaster. I love to sit here and just talk with myself, right? Record it and then have you listen to it. But maybe take a walk and just talk to yourself. Sit down alone when you have some privacy and just talk it out. Or talk to a journal with a pen or pencil and write down how the journey's been for you. Take some time to zoom out. Don't just zoom in on the here and now and the discomfort or whatever you have, but also zoom out and answer these questions. What am I most proud of having accomplished in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years? What have I learned about myself that I'm using now as I move forward? And with those things in mind, as I look forward to the future, beyond the here and now, what might I do differently in order to continue to make improvements? Mindset's so important, and I want to thank Igor once again for being here and for sharing that little tidbit with us. The idea of cultivating the ability to have different mindsets, making space for both. That's my take on it. That's one way that I apply that little lesson. Maybe there's something for you as well. I'd love to hear about it. You can send me a message at Nate Slager on Instagram, or please take a screenshot of yourself listening to the episode and share it to your stories. Tag me. I'd love to do that. I'd love to give you a high five. And thank you so much for listening. You made it to the end of another episode with me. And I want to thank you so much for your time, for your attention, for your energy. And I will talk to you again next time on the Begin Within podcast.